Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: China's nuclear stockpile is hitting 600 warheads, the fastest buildup among nuclear powers in recent years. Is the world facing a new era of nuclear tension? Israel ramping up strikes on Iran's nuclear and missile sites, escalating regional tensions. As the U.S. backs Israel and monitors China's mediation efforts, concerns are growing over Iran's ties to Beijing.
Remember, Iran is the pit bull of China. China is funding Iran.
A cargo flight from China to Luxembourg in Western Europe took a strange detour, flying unusually close to Iranian airspace. What's behind the off-course move? We take a closer look. And President Trump is criticizing Russia's exclusion from the G7. This as the group's leaders meet in Canada to tackle conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East. With wars raging in Ukraine and the Middle East, concerns are growing over whether China and Taiwan could be next, and just how much firepower Beijing is packing. China is now believed to have at least 600 nuclear warheads in its arsenal, and experts warn it could soon rival the U.S. or Russia in long-range missile capabilities. That's according to a new report from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute released on Monday. The report says China's nuclear arsenal is growing faster than any other country's, adding about 100 warheads a year since 2023. This rapid buildup has pushed Beijing's stockpile to at least 600 warheads by early 2025 and is expected to keep growing. Globally, there are roughly 12,000 nuclear warheads, with the U.S. and Russia controlling about 90% of them. While China's stockpile is still smaller, the speed of its expansion is raising alarms. Another major concern is that the New START treaty between the U.S. and Russia is set to expire in early 2026. It's the last remaining nuclear arms agreement between major nuclear powers. Signed in 2010, the treaty limits how many nuclear warheads the U.S. and Russia can deploy. But with no replacement in sight, experts fear both countries could increase their nuclear forces once the deal expires. And with advances in AI and cyber warfare, a new nuclear arms race could be far more dangerous than ever before. Earlier this year, President Trump said any future arms control deal should also include China's nuclear arsenal. It's a stance he's been pushing for since his first term in 2019. A Chinese-linked cargo flight is raising eyebrows. A Cargolux Airlines jet en route from China to Luxembourg appeared to veer toward Iranian airspace before disappearing from public radar over Turkmenistan. That's according to flight tracking app Flight Radar 24. Let's take a closer look.
The move fueling speculation about whether China is quietly flying supplies or equipment to Iran as part of a secret support route. The flight made a stop in Turkmenistan before reaching Europe. Cargolux is partly owned by a Chinese firm. It denies the plane ever entered Iranian airspace, blaming faulty public tracking data. The incident comes amid escalating tensions with Israel targeting Iranian military and nuclear sites and Iran firing missiles in return. Analysts warn of growing China-Iran coordination as part of a broader anti-Western alliance.
Former Democratic Vice President candidate Tim Walz recently suggested that China may have what he called the moral authority to help de-escalate the Israel-Iran conflict. The comment sparked debate given China's significant trade relationship with Iran. What role does China actually play in this conflict? To discuss this, NTD's Don Ma spoke with Gregory Copley, president of the International Strategic Studies Association.
I want to point this out to you as well, and maybe I can get your comments. Former Democratic presidential candidate Tim Walz remarked last week that China may have the, quote, moral authority to de-escalate the Israel-Iran conflict. I mean, this obviously raised some eyebrows. China is a key trading partner to the Iranian regime. How does China fit into this conflict, and what might the Chinese Communist Party want to see happen?
Well, Tim Walz is very pro-Beijing, so I wouldn't listen to his arguments on this at all. The reality is that China has lost all credibility in the Middle East, Persian Gulf, and inside Iran. The Iranian CCP regime promised hundreds of billions of dollars in trade and investment some years ago and has not lived up to that. And the Iranian government itself has called the Beijing out on this matter. Beijing has no real authority in this dispute. The Russian government, on the other hand, is very close to the clerics and could offer some alternatives. And it's probable, in fact, that some of the clerical government's personnel and families have already left for Russia. So if you're counting on someone, I would count on the Russians to be an influence on the outcome of this conflict. However, they are trying to preserve their long-term interest in Iran, which is to have access through Iran to the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. So the question is, how does the West use Russia to broker a reasonable peace which is not hostile to Russia at the same time?
And to dive deeper into China and Iran, we spoke with retired U.S. Army Colonel John Mills. He's a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy. On that China angle, the Wall Street Journal reported this month that China has been supplying Iran with thousands of tons of ballistic missile components. What is China's stake in this conflict?
Well, Iran is their major proxy. We now have an international constellation that's on the China side of the showdown to take down the American-led system. This is the No Limits Agreement that has grown since fall of 2021 that was announced between Russia and China. And so you have Russia, North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, but you also have to include South Africa and Pakistan, and so that is the constellation of the major players that are on the China side of the ledger in the worldwide showdown. There is a world on fire in progress. I would assert we essentially are already in World War III. So it just remains to be seen. I don't think China wants Iran to fall. That would be a huge loss because that Iran's job is to essentially carry out the mayhem in the Middle East theater of operations in the world on fire. They don't want them to collapse. So they have, again, a very large footprint, gets underreported for what's going on inside of Iran by China.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. You can catch the full episode on Genjing World every Tuesday. To watch, simply click the link in the description box down below or search China in Focus at genjingworld.com.